This is my COVID-19 story and how I became a local meme. Kind of put some context to the story. So at the time I was considered essential worker, so I was not required to isolate, traveling in and out of provinces. Plus we were part of the Atlantic bubble. For those that you don't know what the Atlantic bubble is, in Canada, there was a couple provinces that get together and said, okay, if you travel within these provinces, you're not required to isolate. I traveled to New Brunswick, obviously, Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, and Prince Edward Islands. I was doing meeting with several people, and then I flew out to Calgary when I was done all those meetings. Once I flew to Calgary, that was on October 20th, I believe. Let me double check. So on October 20th, 6 a.m. I got on a flight, arrived in Calgary around 10:20 a.m. Once I got to Calgary airport, got my rental car, checked into the hotel, had a couple drinks with, I'm gonna call him Bob, just for identity purposes. So me and Bob had a couple drinks. So after that, we had, I probably had 4 or 5 double rum and cokes, and then I was meeting somebody. So I already planned for this Calgary trip to go meet with a buddy of mine. So I went and had drinks with this guy at Craft Beer Market. We sat there and talked for about an hour and a half, probably 2 hours. And then I came back to the hotel, met Bob again down at the hotel bar, and we had more drinks. Kind of tell you a little bit about myself. When I travel to Calgary, I've traveled to Calgary a lot, like quite a few times. I used to be traveling to Calgary every other week with one of my other jobs. When I travel to Calgary, it's super dry there, so I always get a headache, and I always get a stuffy nose, a super dry nose. And actually, while I was in Calgary, I ended up getting a nosebleed. The next day, after drinking all day, this is when Health Canada thinks I had my first symptom, but it doesn't make any sense because the timelines don't add up. The next day after I had my first symptom, which was the day after I was just drinking all day and just got off a flight from flying all day, I had a headache, and I had a headache for 2 days, and that's very common for me to get a headache going to Calgary, and that's what a lot of people don't understand. It's not like this was my first time in Calgary and during a pandemic, and I got a headache, and that's a symptom of COVID, you should have been smarter. But it's like, no, I travel to Calgary quite a bit, and I know my symptoms when I go to Calgary. But then Santana, my spouse, she says, I'm not feeling well. And I said, you should probably go get tested just to be safe, because she had a couple of symptoms. She went and got tested. She got a negative result. So I'm like, okay, there's no way that I have COVID, because I was just with her previous. And, if she would have had it, I would have had it. Or there's a very high possibility that I would have had it. So carried on the meetings. We went out for dinner. Bob and I shared a joint. Went back to the hotel, went to sleep. Bob the next day wasn't feeling so well, so he went home early. He left, go home. He went and got a COVID test as soon as he landed in New Brunswick. Bob's test came back negative. He doesn't have COVID. Spouse doesn't have COVID. I don't have COVID either, right? So then fast forward to when I fly home. So I fly home on the 24th. Once I landed in New Brunswick, didn't have any symptoms. I get to the airport, the girl's like, okay, you were there for work, perfect, you don't have to isolate since you were there for work. I went home, never thought anything of it. I booked a meeting when I got home with a potential client of mine. You guys all know, probably if you know my story, you know who that client was. People were saying, why did you lie to a friend? Didn't lie to a friend. I was following Health Canada guidelines. So I was growing marijuana at the time, and it was ready for harvest when I came back. So, 4 plants, quite a bit to harvest. They're huge plants. A lot of people, for those weed smokers or weed growers, that when you start to harvest, you get like rashes on your arm, you get a stuffy nose, runny nose, your eyes start watering, basically start having allergic reactions. That night, after harvesting all day, I went on a live stream to give back, because we give back to the cannabis community all the time. So we were doing a giveaway on the live stream. I was joking, and I said, I can't taste it. I really wish I could taste this Pineapple Express or King Tut, but I can't taste it right now. And I was like, maybe I have COVID. And I was just joking, because I didn't think I had COVID at all, because my girlfriend just tested negative, Bob just tested negative, who I shared a joint with. So there was very slim chance that I thought I had COVID. It was a smart ass remark, or it was a joke that I probably shouldn't have joked about now looking back on it, because that's kind of what people really criticized me on, is that video. I didn't think anything of it that night on that live, but then the next day rolled around, and I still couldn't taste or smell anything. I said, okay, that's strange, but I had no other symptoms. No other symptoms. So I thought maybe I'm still allergic, it's in the house, but just in case, because I'm going down to the States, I should go get tested. I don't want to get down to the United States, come back, and 1, spread it to people, 2, I don't want to go down there and get stuck and then have to pay for US healthcare because it's super expensive. When I got tested, she handed me a piece of paper. She said, this is where you find your results. And she said, you should receive your results within a day or two. I said, okay, sounds good. This would have been on November 2nd. November 3rd, I had that meeting with a potential client of mine. Other than that, I didn't leave the house. After I got that test, I said, okay, I'm going to go do that meeting. We wore masks, social distance. There was only 2 people in this meeting. Finished the meeting up, went to Boston Pizza in Fredericton with my business partner that I was at the time, and we had lunch together, drove him back home, got to his house, was helping him out set up his microphone for YouTube. I pulled up my phone. I was like, oh, let's see if I tested positive for COVID. Just joking around because I didn't think I was going to test positive. To my surprise, I opened up my phone and it said positive test. I said, I'm positive. And he's like, what do you mean? He's like, you're with me. And I said, no, I'm serious. Like I showed him the test and he said, okay, well, you got to leave. And I was like, obviously. So I left the house, got in my car, and I didn't even make it to the end of his subdivision before Health Canada called me and was like, hey, did you see your test results? And I said, I did. I'm actually just leaving my friend's house now. I'm in my car right now. She's like, okay, that's fine. And she's like, okay, well, let's do a little bit of basic contact tracing. So I talked to her all the way up, probably 15 minutes of my drive, which is a 25-minute drive home. She said, once you get home, I'll call you, half an hour prior or half an hour later. So that way we can go through your bank transactions and we can kind of see exactly where you're at. So I got home, we did all that stuff. Not once did she say, you shouldn't have been out. Not once did she say, you should have been isolating while you were waiting your COVID results. That never crossed her vocabulary once. Again, didn't think I was doing anything wrong. Didn't think I was in the wrong whatsoever. So we went and did all the contact tracing. That day of the 3rd, the people that I was at the meeting with called me, or not to call me, text me, said, hey, did you test positive for COVID? And I was told by Health Canada, do not tell anybody that you've tested positive for COVID until we finish our contact tracing. That put me in a hard spot. So I said to the guy, no, I did not. Only 1 day passes. I'm getting hours and hours of phone calls from Health Canada. And after that day passed, it was now the 4th, and someone from Ontario or somewhere did contact tracing, which is super weird. They did contact tracing like 10 different times, not really, probably like 5 different times, 4 different times. They were asking the same questions over and over again. I'm like, shouldn't you guys have this written down? During the phone call, this guy was calling me, and I said, hey, look, I said, this guy's been calling me nonstop, and I really want to tell him the truth. Is it okay that I tell him now that I have COVID-19 and I was a positive case? She said yes. And I was like, is he required to shut down his business? Is he required to, close his store? She said, no, he's not required to close his business or shut down his store. And I said, okay. So I hung up the phone, called him up. The guy said, hey, look, I just want to, know the truth. He's like, I'm not going to freak out at you, blah, blah. And I said, that's the reason I'm calling. I said, yes, I tested positive for COVID-19. And then he lost it at me. Lost his mind at me. And I think he lost it because he went to the media thinking that it was a scam call that Health Canada was calling him. And as a business owner myself, I get a ton of scam calls through the day. So if I was to go to the media every time that I got a scam call, I'd have no time in the run of the day. And I think that's why he was most upset, because it made him look like an idiot for overreacting. I think it was 2 days later, 3 days later, maybe the CBC article came out. There was a lot of misinformation there and a lot of context that wasn't put together correctly. So I reached out to the girl that did the article and said, hey, look, I'd like to do a rebuttal article on it. So I did my rebuttal article, and I don't know if that was the worst thing to do or the best thing to do, but people blew me up. That's when a bunch of these memes started coming up. And all these memes, one, where do people find time to make these memes, for one? Like, do you not have anything better than just sit at home and make memes of some random dude? It was just insane. People telling me to leave the province, that you better watch out, you should get your face smashed in, people telling me to go kill myself, people saying that you're a murderer, you stole Christmas, and I'm like, none of this is because of me, but people, unfortunately, just react. They're keyboard warriors, and they think that they're these tough guys, and they think that they know everything just because they read it online. But realistically, they don't know the backstory of everything. They don't know leading up to it. They did the same thing with the guy in Campbellton. There was a doctor in Campbellton who was wrongfully accused of being a COVID super spreader and being irresponsible. And it's the same situation as what happened with me. I was getting death threats after death threats after death threats, people saying that I was, trying to use common sense. I lost friends of 10 years over it because of lack of knowledge and for them just being so naive. Campbellton, There was a doctor in Campbellton who was wrongfully, accused of being a COVID super spreader and being irresponsible. And it's the same situation as what happened with me. I was getting death threats after death threats. I lost friends of 10 years over it because of lack of knowledge, and for them just being so naive and so listening to what the media says and based their own opinion on what information they saw without even coming to me and asking me. Never once did they ask if I was okay, which is crazy to me. These friends of mine, I considered them family basically. Like they were my second parents. Not once did they said, knowing that I was a COVID positive patient, not once did it cross their vocabulary. Are you okay? How are you feeling? Never crossed there. It was just shunning and shaming and shunning me out, deleting me off Facebook, calling me crazy, shouldn't have traveled for work, and use your common sense. And I'm like, we're in a pandemic right now. We've never experienced anything like this. Those symptoms I had, like I stated, I've had those all the time going to Calgary. Never thought that was an issue. My spouse tested negative. This Bob guy tested negative. Fast forward a bit, we go into orange phase, and this is where it gets, so that article came out the day before we went into orange phase in New Brunswick. And this is why I think I got attacked so much, because so many people thought I was the reason we went into orange phase. But the facts are 0 people that I know directly that I came in contact with tested positive for COVID-19. A business partner that I was with tested negative, his wife tested negative, his kids all tested negative for COVID-19. My spouse tested negative 4 times. They asked her for 4 tests. I asked for a second test because I didn't believe I had COVID. I still didn't believe I had COVID because my symptoms went away. I had no symptoms at this time. They refused me a second test. I had a bag for a second test. They finally agreed to it. I got my results back in 20 minutes, a half an hour. So I don't even think they tested me. They just put it in there and said, yeah, you're still positive. And the people that I came in contact with were required to isolate for 14 days from the time I came in contact with them, but I was only required to isolate from the 2nd to the 8th. That doesn't make any sense. And my actual symptoms didn't start until the 31st, 31st the 1st. So I should have been isolating till the 14th, 15th, 16th. But Health Canada didn't think that was right. And I said that to them. I said, look, shouldn't I be isolating? No, you're fine to isolate and go out, after that. And so I'm like, all right, Health Canada knows best. I'll, do what they're saying. So that's what I did. And because I followed Health Canada guidelines, I got shamed for it. So kind of what I was going on about with the orange phase. So when the orange phase happened, that article came out. So everybody thought it was me. But again, 0 people that I came in contact with tested positive for COVID-19. So then as chatter went on throughout the week, new information came out, not on the media, but just small town talk. And there was this person that came from Montreal that was not wearing a mask during the Sea Dogs game, not wearing a mask at Rockies, this is a local sports bar, and not wearing he was just going around, not following any of the rules, and he ended up having COVID-19. Now this never got released, I don't think, publicly. While I was editing this video, I just noticed that I was mentioning that Rocky Sports Bar and the Sea Dogs game and all that stuff on there, and so I pulled up an article from CBC, and the dates that this super spreader was at, I was already out of isolation. I already tested positive for COVID on the 2nd, and I was well out of isolation on the 8th. And these events, so the Rocky Sports Bar events, I just have it pulled up on my phone here. The Rocky Sports Bar event happened on the 13th and the 14th of November, and my test results came in on the 2nd of November. So I wasn't out traveling around, and even if I was, my isolation date was off on the 8th. So I was already out of isolation at these times. The second one was Big Tide Brewing Company. That was on November 16th, and Java Moose on the 16th. So I just wanted to come in here really quickly and put this in here because I think it's super important that, the guy who was going around with COVID was after my isolation date was already over. And these super spreader events happened on, after the 8th. And that's really all that matters, is that it happened after the 8th and I was already out of isolation. And on top of that, I wasn't at Rocky Sports Bar. I wasn't at any of these locations on these dates. So just wanted to toss us in here. It's super weird. New Brunswick is a super messed up place to have that happen because everybody's super cliquey. They just like diving into people's businesses. If this happened out here in Victoria, out in British Columbia, there's hundreds of cases a day that happen. Nobody gives a flying crap. But because it happened in a small town, I made CBC News, I made the Globe and Mail, and by the time this video is released, there's probably a New York Times article on me right now, and the New York Times article is actually talking about the problem that we're having during the pandemic of how bad COVID shaming is. COVID shaming is a real thing, and it shouldn't be happening. I mean, I'm just gonna lay it out there. My opinion on it is, it's crazy what the government's doing in Canada right now. Okay, you look at a country like Australia. They handled it very, very well. They shut down, I think, for 2 to 3 months, whatever it was. And as soon as the pandemic started, and no flights in, no flights out, businesses shut down, everything just went on total lockdown for like 2 to 3 months. I've got friends there that are now going out and partying. They're going out and having dinner with their family. They're going and spending normal Christmas together. They're not wearing masks because they dealt with it. They dealt with it properly. There was no half-assing of, yeah, you can go to Boston Pizza with the same household, and you can meet your family there and they can sit at a different table, and I can go sit in a restaurant with 100 different strangers, but I can't go to my parents' house. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, that makes total sense. I can go into a restaurant with 100 strangers, but I can't go to my parents' house with 2 people.
Okay, can I book a table of 20 at a restaurant?
Yes, Jason, you can absolutely do that.
Awesome, fantastic. Can I have a dinner party with 20 people at home?
No, Jason, that's irresponsible and will be putting the public health in jeopardy. No.
Yeah, of course, sorry.
Doesn't make a whole lot of sense, Canada. Then they deem certain businesses essential. I think every business is essential. I don't care who you are. Every business, every job is essential. It's essential for you to go do that job, to pay for your food, to pay for, put a roof over your head, to have your business is essential to you. That business is essential to that person. Walmart, Best Buy, the malls, those are not essential. Why are those allowed remaining open while tiny mom and pop shops have to shut down? Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. And that's kind of where the confusion comes in here in Canada, is that we're being told all these mixed messages, and the rules are changing every 2 weeks, every week potentially. Like, it's frustrating how Canada is dealing with it. And if they did it properly in the beginning, we would be in the same situation as Australia right now, where they're pretty lenient on things right now. They don't have to wear a mask. Every business is open. Another thing is the whole CERB thing. If the government did it in a way where they shut down for 2 months or 3 months, they would only have to pay businesses and people 2 months or 3 months of CERB, and that would have saved millions of taxpayers' dollars doing it that way, compared to doing it how they're doing it currently right now, which is going in an orange phase and then red phase and then back to yellow phase and then orange phase, and they just have to shut everything down. If the government really cared, they'd shut everything down. They'd stop everything. They'd stop travel they'd stop everything for 2 to 3 months, and then let everybody stay home for 2 to 3 months and pay those people then. And that's what they should have done at the beginning, because instead of getting paid for almost a year, and now we're a year and a half into this, or we're going into 2 years into this right now, doesn't make a whole lot of sense at all. If they just did that in the beginning, we wouldn't be in this whole mess right now. But that's my COVID-19 story and how I became a local meme. And I think that Canada needs to get a hold on this COVID thing so people can go out and enjoy their lives and not be on lockdown. The solution can't be worse than the problem. And if you look at suicide rates, overdose rates, all of this stuff has increased during COVID, and nobody talks about it. Nobody talks about this. It doesn't make the news because that's not catchy enough, right? That's not what people are looking for. They don't want to, doesn't go to their narrative. And, I just hope that we can get over this sooner than later, because I want to go get on a plane so I can go travel again. Anyways, guys, if you guys like this video, I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'm sure I'm going to hear them anyways, positive or negative. Please leave a comment below, subscribe. So, see you guys next time.